You think about it at a business level. You say, okay, what's the one thing I can do today in all the things that I have to do, such that by doing it, it makes everything else easier or unnecessary. And the thing about easier or unnecessary means you get to go home on time. See, when you do the focusing question and you answer what you're doing in that manner, because your work will never be done. I don't care who you are on this planet.
That's true.
It is true for all of us. It's, by the way, and you can think of 100 things to do with your kids. You can think of 100 things to do with your spouse or your buddies. But at the end of the day, if you did the thing that gave you the most joy or was the most productive, that had the biggest impact, and you did that, everything else would be easier, or you wouldn't even care.
Yeah.
You did the thing that mattered most, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for me, that when you add in those words, makes it easier or unnecessary. It removes all of the mental blocks for me.
Right.
So, and I'm sure for a lot of our viewers too, it removes mental blocks for them.
Well, your goal in using that question is not to do everything. Your goal is to do the thing that matters most, that makes everything else that you could do either easier because you've lined up the dominoes, or unnecessary because it knocked them all down by itself. In other words, you get to go home on time. You get to have a life and do other things and still lead a massive business life because you're a fiend on focusing on what matters most, right?
Right.
The way book writing came about for me is exactly that. I put a bunch of people in a room that ran the businesses back about 11 years ago, and we brainstormed what was the thing that we could do that would make the organization actually fashionable to top producing people. Keller Williams has lots of people per office. It looks like we're running a numbers game, and so it looked like we were a focused on low production group because when you have lots of people, your production starts, no matter how good your best people are, it starts to look like a mirror of the industry.
Right.
Your average agent does what the average person does because you're a large population, but the profitability demanded that. So we were caught in a bind. We're not going to break our economics, but we knew that we understood how to be productive at a high level. How could we make that really work? The answer was we brainstormed for an entire day. We had over 100 ideas on the board. The only one that we actually implemented consistently over time was we wrote the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. Game changer.
Absolute game
changer.
It
was a game changer, and that's all we did. And by the way, now let's go one step further. If you're going to write a book and you're not a writer, what's the one thing you have to do such that by doing that, everything else will be easier and necessary? It's block out 4 hours a day to write in the book.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's it. And that was easy for me, Kevin, because as a salesperson, I knew I had to lead generate 3 to 4 hours every day. It was my one thing that drove my sales career. As a manager, I knew the one thing I had to do every day in order to build the office was to go out and meet top agents and meet agents and recruit them into the firm, right? So every step of my career, I had always identified what's the one thing that drives the business, and I had made that my 3 to 4 hour time block. So when I started writing,
you just did the same thing.
I just do it over there. I just do it over there for 4 hours at that conference table and that big giant screen, and that's 4 hours a day.
So you've been living this for a lot longer than you wrote since before you wrote the book.
Obviously. No, I've been using this since the 90s, absolutely, and been using the focusing question. The issue was when we went to write the book, it wasn't originally going to be called this. We were going down a different path, and finally, what happened was Jay asked me the question. He goes, "Well, Gary, what's the one thing, interestingly enough, that you want people to get from this book?" Well, it's the focusing question. And he said, okay then, first, let's call it the one thing. And number 2, let's make that the issue in the book. And so that's what happened. So all of a sudden, it became called the one thing, and the focusing question became... Now, the only reason why you don't get to it to chapter 10 is because I'm thoroughly convinced that if your head is full of the wrong stuff, there's no room for the right stuff.
You gotta get rid of all the junk first.
Yeah, so I traditionally, if you're ever in a class with me or being coached by me, I'm traditionally going to say, first thing we need to do is we need to get out the myths of or whatever you're thinking now that's incorrect. So it's really 2 books. For the first half of the book is really about the myths, the challenges, the lies, that people buy into that keep them from being willing to do one thing. Once you get rid of those lies, getting to the focusing question makes sense. If you go straight to it, nobody buys in because it seems too simple.